Hey, welcome to Daniel's Live. Chicken the corn, eating corn, Chicken the corn, eating corn, Chicken the corn, fucking grown, Chicken the corn, fucking grown, Chicken the corn, fucking grown, Chicken the corn, fucking grown,
You are listening to 24/7 online radio.
So I'm joined today by Bushra Amiwala, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. She is running for Congress in Illinois' 9th District, and she's 27 years old. And so I saw her on my good friend Coach D's show, and I love that interview. And so shout out to Coach D who hooked us up, and here we are. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Tennessee Brando, and it's awesome to be here. And I had a great chat with Coach D as well, and maybe we'll chat about different things. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And one thing I was really impressed by, I'll say sometimes on the channel that I've been talking politics my whole life, but you got involved. I mean, you went out there and am I right? You were 19 when you first ran for a position?
Exactly. I was 19 years old when I first launched my political campaign.
That is truly awesome. So have you always been political your whole life? Is it something you always wanted to be a part of?
I think I didn't realize how political my life was until far later in life. Everything from the resources that we had growing up, now all of that is political. Healthcare is political, SNAP is political, FAFSA and tuition assistance for higher education is suddenly political. Back then, I think these were just awesome things that government provided to give me the boost that I needed to have access to a great life in this country. And now it's all political. That being said, though, my spirit of service stemmed from the spirit of gratitude. And it just was in the nonprofit world for a while. I never saw myself in the political space. And it's hard to imagine yourself existing in a realm where you don't see someone who looks like you already there.
Yeah, and it's really crazy how these issues did become political, and the parties found a way to get people pitted against their own interests. And I deal with that a lot where I'm from in Tennessee. You have people who I think they have the best of intentions, but they wind up voting against their own interests and their own selves. And that's one of those things that I feel like is a real challenge for us to get by.
100%. And I think it's a cheap shot at getting people to fight amongst themselves while maintaining this state of distraction, so we don't actually see who the real perpetrators are and who's actually in control around our country.
Yeah, I was looking at your website and I was really impressed. I love the things, your priorities, the things you're wanting to fight for. And one that is big for me in Tennessee would be education. And I loved one of the quotes on your website said, education should be a pathway to opportunity and not a lifetime of debt. So what can you do to make public college tuition free and help to cancel student loan debt?
So first, every public and modern country in the world that exists right now has at least one sort of higher education public option that exists, whether it be trade school, whether it be after high school, whether it be community college or some sort of that. The United States is the only modern country in the world that does not have that option readily available for its students. And I think that's intentionally designed. If we look at tuition rates and how much they've increased in just the past 20 years alone, that is excluding an entire demographic of people from even having college and higher education as an option, whether it be trade school, whether it be community college, whether it be private or public university options. I have friends who I went to high school with who went on to be drafted in the NFL, perform on Broadway, and work at NASA. And I have peers that could have done all that and more, but could not afford to go to college and did not see that as an option for themselves. And it's quite simple. Something like community college is designed to be a cost-effective, if not free, public-funded model that already exists. But for some reason, education is always the first tadpole that this country attacks.
Yeah, one of the things that we deal with in Tennessee is there's the kids grow up, and I've got a 25-year-old son. So, he goes out into the world and he's looking to make a way for himself. And then when he gets out there, he comes back and says, Dad, I can't make it in this world. I can't get ahead. Then you have people that winds up falling into bad habits where I'm from. They wind up doing other things to make income. So it really becomes a hard way to go for kids your age. And I say the word kid because I'm not trying to call you a kid, but I'm just saying I've got a 25-year-old son. So to me, that's a kid. But, we're still in Tennessee. We're at like $7.25 for a minimum wage, which is hard for me to even wrap my mind around. And that's why I want to talk to you about that. And how do you think we can go about raising the minimum wage and help people to understand that that's something that's so needed these days?
There was a time just 10, 15 years ago when we were talking about the fight for minimum wage and raising the federal minimum wage to $15. And we see today that even a number like $15 as a federal minimum wage is outdated. If we actually look at the cost of inflation, the cost of living, and what it looks like to survive, not even just like live, but to just survive in this country, the actual minimum wage, we should be advocating for $27 as that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not even close to being there just yet, meaning something like demanding a $15 or a $17 federal minimum wage is table stakes right now. We're seeing working class people be at the current grunt of barely being able to make it by and scrap by in this country. And then on top of that, you have healthcare debt. On top of that, you have student debt. And then you question why this generation isn't able to purchase and own a home at the same breath, too.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a lot of young people get behind candidates like Mamdani in New York because he's bringing a message that they can relate to, which is, I've always said, is one Bernie Sanders has been saying for 50 years. So how do we get over these hurdles? Like, how do we finally make a message like that stick?
I think it's authenticity, actually. There's something about seeing Mamdani as a young, brown Muslim man saying these things where it's like, I actually believe what you're saying because I feel like you've experienced some of this too. That level of sincerity, genuinity, and authenticity is really a difference between someone who might be saying the same message, to your point, like a Bernie Sanders, to someone who you can actually see yourself in. And I think that's why the Democratic Party is finding themselves right now at this turning point where the current people that are representative of that party are doing the bare minimum of what everyday people are expecting that party to champion from a values and messaging standpoint.
I agree with that totally. And I'm glad you brought that up because one of the questions I had, do you think we will ever see the Democratic establishment ever understand? I don't think they can win on their own. I really don't. I think if they just try to go with that middle of the road centrist Democrat again, we're just going to keep losing. So do you think they will ever come around to embracing the Mamdani kind of message that the people are behind? It's hard for me to wrap my mind around why can't they just listen to the room, And
it's because you look at who is funding their political campaigns that gets them into elected office. So I think, no, the current establishment Democrats probably will never get there, but they will not be the ones that are keeping up with the move that the party is shifting towards. As the tide is changing in one direction, those establishment Democrats will, candidly speaking, probably not be there either. And I think Mamdani's victory in June was an example and an opportunity for every Democrat to get behind him and endorse him. He was the Democratic nominee, yet the inability to do so was so telling to every other person in this country.
Yeah, one thing that I've told people is, I really think when Donald Trump first came along, I mean, the Republican Party of that day, they really didn't want him. The Mitch McConnells of the world did not want Trump at first, but they realized they were going to lose without him. And so they got behind Donald Trump for all the wrong reasons. And my question's always been, why can't the Democratic establishment get behind someone for all the right reasons,
And I think that, unfortunately, it could be ego. It could be this idea, this self-serving prophecy that, well, I'm smarter and I'm more credible and I have more years of experience that people might think to themselves. But I think the truest, utmost form of leadership is servant leadership, where you remove yourself from the equation and it's not about you as an individual.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's one thing, in the Democratic establishment too, that's always like, well, this person's next, this person's next in line and they're more qualified. And really, you could make that argument in a lot of cases. I've always went back to, if you went back to the Bush, the George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton election of 92. I mean, you could argue that George H.W. Bush was more qualified at that particular point in history. He had more experience under his belt. But Bill Clinton resonated with people back then because he was speaking to the issues that they were most cared about. And I think the Democrats have kind of lost their way on a lot of that, and they would better suit themselves to go back to the basics. I mean, look at FDR, everything we were ever founded on. If they just went back to that basic principles of what we stood for, I think you would see. I don't think Trump is as hard to beat as they've made it out to be.
Yeah, and I think the way that we measure qualifications and credentials is different in 2025. It's different from when it was even in 2019. Right now, what makes you a qualified, credible person is being able to speak to the issues that you care about and to be unbought. Like, that really is what makes you a credible, qualified person in my eyes today in 2025 as a candidate. It's like, are you unbought? And do you actually believe the things that you are saying? That is the true definition of what it means to be a true leader right now. And that definition is one that maybe wasn't as universally accepted even back in 2019 or a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and we're seeing so many, of the establishment Democrats. You can always see when they're answering. It's almost as though they're reading off the pamphlet, and that's so frustrating to me because there's nothing authentic about that. And like you said, I think one of the things about Mamdani that just made him resonate was that he was relatable. He talked to the people. He didn't talk down to them. He didn't come off like, hey, it's my turn. Hey, I'm smarter. Just trust me. And I think that's one of the reasons why that we've seen him do well. And I think that's why that more people are looking for candidates like that all across the country. But another thing that I want to talk to you about, we've had all this talk about the Epstein files. I saw a really good clip that came out from the victims talking about that. And I can't believe we're at a place in American history where this is an issue that's, again, how we've made this political. So what do we do going forward if we can get past this moment in time? What do we do going forward to ensure that victims will be protected and we will listen to them over the powers that be?
I really hope that this is something that every single person to their core continues to know, that they have to listen to victims, have to listen to survivors, and it is not something that needs to be political at all. To your point, I mean, we saw someone like Adelita Grijalva in Arizona's 7th congressional district not be sworn in for almost 47 days because of this government shutdown, knowing that she would be the singular deciding vote required to release the Epstein files. Like, this is not something that should have been prolonged to this point, because at the end of the day, the average American, does it change the way they live their life, something like the Epstein files? Perhaps not. However, this is something that's a true detriment to the types of leaders that we have representing us in Washington. So where is the bright line between accountability and things being prolonged for the sake of people trying to cover themselves right now?
Yeah, I just really hope that if anything, this is a learning experience for all of us, and it's one of those things we can learn from and grow, because it's just been so frustrating watching it turn into a political moment, and it comes down to like, oh, well, what Democrats on the list? Well, now wait a minute, there's a Republican on the list, and it's not about that. I think that went over so many people's head.
Agree, and it's like, regardless of what party affiliation, I'm concerned that someone's on this list, regardless of their party affiliation. And I think everyday Americans are as well. We're seeing right now, it's the 1% versus the 99% rest of us, and it's bought versus unbought. Regardless of what side of the aisle you're bought on both fronts, unfortunately.
That's very true. And, one thing I wanted to get your opinion on, I saw an interview with Michelle Obama where she recently said that she didn't think it was possible that a female could ever be elected president. Do you agree with that, or how do you feel about that one?
I saw that clip too, and Michelle Obama spoke in a way where she said, as a country, like, we are just not ready for anyone, actually, whether it be a woman of color, a person of color. Like, she was the closest to the Obama administration, and the amount of preconceived notions and stereotypes, and even the differences in how people spoke about someone simply because of their racial or sexist undertones that existed. And I think beyond the sexism piece, I think there's so much our country is not ready for just yet. But I also think that appetite is being met with a rejection of what we've always been served as well, for the sake of the metaphor. So I do think the way that we stand right now, like, we need to get really beyond whether it be the sexism and racism that's entrenched in the founding of our country. And I think we will be ready in a very short period of time. But the way that things are divisive right now, we're all just in echo chambers. The world is intentionally designed where, whether you consume your media through social media or a specific news channel, you're constantly being fed a narrative that is already affirming what you already believe to be true. And that is what's making it very dangerous, and why our country's unprepared right now.
Yeah, and it's so sad as I'm hearing you say that, because I just remember going back to Obama being elected, and I thought, okay, we've made progress. And a friend of mine told me one time, he said, yeah, but there's the pendulum always swinging, and there's always people that's going to react to something. And I really do believe that Donald Trump was a product of the people who were reacting in protest to Obama. And it's just sad to me that we're having this conversation in 2025, because if you'd have told me back when I was back even when I was your age, Obama was getting elected when I was your age, and I would have said, oh, we'll be way past that in 2025. So to hear you say, we have to get to this point, it's a point we should have been at a long time ago.
I totally agree. And I see the pendulum example all the time as well. But each time the pendulum swings back into the direction it was, it's incremental inches of progress that's being made. Mm-hmm. And I think that my generation is an example of a generation that's not going to wait for our turn. We're not going to wait for a specific time. We're demanding that time be made and curated right now. And historically, maybe that type of urgency and demand hasn't been made as clearly. But even I remember myself when I was first running for public office in 2017, this was 3 months after Trump was first inaugurated as our president. And we saw the way people talked about Hillary Clinton's pantsuits that entire election cycle. And newspapers would write about my stylish light pink hijab after debates and forums, not touching on the actual concrete substance of what I had just spoken about in that forum as well.
Yeah. And, so tell us a little bit, I want to know a little bit about your upbringing and, how you've dealt with that misogyny and that racism as your life, has progressed. Has it gotten better, worse? Where are we at?
So I remember I was on a live TV interview back when I was first running, and the anchor said, Bushra, with ageism, racism, sexism, and Islamophobia all working against you, which would you say is the worst? And it's not the game show I signed up to be on, but I do remember innately answering sexism without hesitation. It's my intersection as an identity of a woman that makes every other ism and phobia uniquely more amplified in a negative way. So I'm not just a young person, I'm a young woman. I'm not just a person of color, I'm a woman of color. And I'm not just a Muslim person, I'm a Muslim woman. And that intersection of me being a woman makes every other ism and phobia that exists in the fabric of our country amplified. What is a little bit different now is that I'm in the acceptance phase where I know that I may not be the singular tipping point that pushes someone from pushing their preconceived notions beyond what they're actually open to meeting someone of a different background, but I can try. And I'm focusing on the two things I can control, which is my intention and my effort. And my intentions to make a really positive difference in my community, and my effort is how I show up every single day. The rest is not in my hands.
One thing I'm really glad to see is folks like you just owning it and saying, this is who I am unapologetically, because I feel like that, after 9/11, there was a lot of, there still is a lot of fear mongering that goes on. But I loved when Mom Donnie was on stage. He's like, I am a Muslim and I'm not apologizing. And I'm like, you shouldn't have to. We live in a world, we have freedom of religion. I tell people this all the time. We have freedom of religion. It doesn't matter. It's what the person does and, with their life and how they contribute to society and try to make it a better world, try to leave the world better than you found it. So I applaud you for just, saying this is who I am unapologetically. I feel like that we need more of that. And I think people, even if they do disagree with you, I think more people will just respect, like you said, the authenticity of this is me.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think on both sides, right? You have the people that look up to you. I see people that see themselves in me that are not young Muslim women. They will be queer, older Black men who also see themselves in me. Because when you show up authentically, you are accepting parts of you that are shining beyond what's out here in the physical and in the exterior. And when I function in that way, I find that I'm bringing others along for the ride and conversation to see me, relate to me, and see parts of me beyond my affinity and my demographic that I represent on a physicality front too. And we do have more in common than we don't. But I do think that the hate and divisive nature that's been ingrained in our country prevents us from getting there.
Yeah. And how do you think as we go forward that we'll be able to pull people together? I really think that, personally, I just feel like that the more that people realizes, hey, the Republican Party didn't have our best interests at heart. Trump definitely didn't. He was really in it for himself. I hate to say it, but maybe as more people struggle, will that be what brings us together or how do we get there?
Honestly, I do think that when people are in survival mode, the last thing they can think about is unity on that front, because people are really just trying to get by. People's emotions are higher. They're more tense in that way. And I don't know if it takes hitting rock bottom to get to this place of unity, but I do think that is a state that might have to be created first before there's any sort of unification on that front, because right now the current narrative is intentionally designed to point the finger and blame someone else who looks a certain type of way, who's from a different country, as the reason why you're struggling. And until we address the core of quote unquote, who is responsible for the current state of our nation, that is the only thing that can change the sentiment. And it's pointing the fingers at the billionaires and the oligarchs that run our country.
Yeah. I've seen so many people where I'm from, and I've been preaching this to them for years. I see them get worked up and worried about things that's never going to come to East Tennessee where I'm from. They're never going to face it. They're never going to deal with it. It's not something, but they get so scared of something. And then you have Fox News, have all the right wing echo chambers. And in my part of the world, you have the Bible Belt. You have the churches that I don't think people really understand just how much, this is from a Southerner's perspective, that stuff is ingrained in us from the time we're kids, that D really stands for the devil, more so than it does Democrat. It just becomes a talking point. And then to have someone suddenly break from that, you're not just asking them to vote for a different political candidate. You're asking them to go against everything they were ever taught as a kid, everything their grandparents stood for. So it's their whole upbringing and identity that then you're saying to them, we need you to step away from that. And that's really hard, I think, for some people outside my part of the world to understand, but it's also hard to get through to the people where I'm from that, hey, we've just been used and manipulated. That's how I feel. I feel like we've been used and manipulated for so long by the churches and by the media that, I think it's going to take a lot of time for us to realize which way we need to be going on these things.
Yeah, and I don't think that one party is to blame on the other. I think I grew up in a really progressive town right here in Skokie where being Republican was the R word. And
Mhm.
it goes on both sides. I think
Mhm.
both sides of the aisle, every single person with their own political ideology and belief is in an echo chamber because of media and social media. And
Mhm.
that is the most dangerous state a human mind can be in, because when we see public radio being defunded, when we see public education being defunded, we know that's intentionally being done to reduce our critical thinking skills, because that actually is all we have at the end of the day, to read beyond the headlines, to read beyond the clickbait, and to actually comprehend and understand what we care about. And I think that is what really fears me about the way that we consume information.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I said, this day and age, we take in more information in a day's time than my grandfather did, back when he was a kid. There's just so much information. And then a lot of times people do go looking for what will comfort them the fastest, like what kind of fits my preconceived notion. And we're all guilty of falling into those echo chambers. That's why that I always try to, to go outside that and listen to everyone and what they're saying, because it's always interesting too when you meet someone who you have strong disagreements with, and you're almost to the point of coming to blows. You're so intense about it, but then they say something that will stop you in your tracks and make you think, and you look at things differently. So have you ever had that happen to you? Have you ever been in a situation where you might have strongly disagreed with someone on the opposite side, but then they made a point that you said, wait a minute, I never quite looked at it that way?
Honestly, I'm what I call myself a radical empath. I used to be on the debate team in high school growing up, and I coached debate for a little bit in undergrad too. And when you're on the debate team, you're given one issue and you need to be prepared to be pro or against this issue, regardless what the topic is. That means I have really learned how to understand every single side of an argument. And with that, I've come to my personal cores beliefs. That being said, I also can understand where someone is coming from, even if I disagree with them. And I think that that nuance is something that allows me to listen more than I need to argue and debate, because sometimes it's recognizing there will not be common ground in certain issues. Sometimes there is, but when people are talking about something like immigration and the way that the current administration has been deploying ICE agents in my hometown here in Chicago and beyond, there is no common ground with you have one group saying deport them all and you have another saying let's not kidnap our neighbors without any sort of due process. But then for some issues, there is a mutual ground. And I think universal healthcare is a really good example of that. I've been finding that people will find out that this is the economically viable and fiscally responsible mode for our country to adopt to. And suddenly someone who identifies as a right-wing Republican believes that the universal healthcare model is what's best for our country because they were brought on board with a different argument to appeal to them.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that across, because I really do believe that when it winds up hitting the person the closest, like, I've got two elderly parents I'm taking care of. I've got progressive viewpoints. I've got a cousin who's taking care of his elderly mom. He's on the opposite side of the fence politically, but we could get on the same boat on the universal health care. We could get on the same boat with that because we're both facing that same thing. And so maybe as we're going forward, if we can steer more and more people away from these culture wars and get them back to the issues that we're all facing together, maybe that's the bridge that we can find some common ground on.
It is, and it sounds really kumbaya these days, but I tell people we all just care about having safe communities, good access to public schools, and to be able to survive and to afford our goods, gas, and groceries. That's actually it. Like, it really does boil down to that is what people in this country are looking for. And the fact that that is what this land was founded and promised on, and we are not able to comfortably say that that's what we're receiving, should send alarm signals to every single person in any leadership power in this country.
Yeah, and before we go, there's one thing I would love to ask you and hear your take on. Like, what would you say to young folks out there that are interested in getting in the political process and getting involved? What advice would you give to them as they go forward in their own political careers at a young age?
The advice I give to young people that are hoping to get involved in the political process is whatever you start to do it consistently. So if you're going to volunteer for 1 hour a week, make sure you volunteer for 1 hour a week, every single week. Make sure that if you want to donate a penny to a charity every day, donate a penny to a charity every day. Whatever you do, start doing it consistently, because we are the generation that gets accused of leaning into our emotions, being out in rallies and protests, and then not doing tangible action afterwards. Absolutely not. Whatever we do, we will do consistently. And it's those consistent acts that will take us to where we need to be.
That's really good. And also, before we go, let everyone know where they can find you, because I would love for people to be more familiar with what you're doing.
Yes, I'd love to stay connected. My website is bushraforcongress.com. It's my first name for Congress. And I'm on all socials at Bushra Amiwala. I respond to all my DMs except for the mean ones on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been great having you. You're welcome back here anytime. It was a great. over that finish line and defeat Matt Van Epps, because the last thing we need in Tennessee is another guy that's going to take his marching orders from Donald Trump. But I'm going to play you a clip here from Afton, because I share this pet peeve with her, and that's when people says, well, they got what they voted for. Take a look at this clip, and then we're going to talk more about it.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for recognizing that Tennessee is a beautiful place, and there are people that are trying to do good work here. We have some of the best organizers in the country because we have to operate under incredibly oppressive circumstances. And I think my biggest pet peeve in politics is when people who don't live in the South say you get what you voted for, because this is not what I voted for. I didn't vote for the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. I didn't vote for the most dangerous place for workers in the country. I didn't vote for the highest inflationary cost of groceries in the country. But that is what 15 years of Republican supermajority rule the state has done. Tennessee has been bought and sold to the highest bidder, and those are multinational corporations in the billionaire boys club. There are no checks and balances, and what we are seeing right now is a rupture in their paradigm, because they have ruled, as you said, with an iron fist, and have squelched dissent and dissonance. And I think they're seeing now we're seeing the kind of rumblings, the simmering of perhaps a different paradigm. One of which is economic populism, and ensuring that the real villains are painted as the billionaire boys club and these greedy corporations that are pitting us against each other as we fight and not delivering for the Tennessee people.
I agree with every word of that, because it's a pet peeve of mine too. And listen, I understand why people say it. I especially understand why people who aren't from Tennessee says it. It's real easy to look over and say, well, that's what y'all voted for. You get what you deserve. But there's a whole lot of good people in Tennessee that did not vote for this. Number one, they never voted for Trump. I know so many like-minded people who for years have been fighting the good fight and trying to stand up for what was right. And then you had a lot of people that voted thinking things would be better. You also had a lot of people that voted just because Papa votes for Republicans. And I know that people outside this part of the world may not understand that, but in the South, following in the footsteps of your grandfather for whatever reason is something that a whole lot of people do, and they will vote along those lines just because Papa did it. Now, both my papas were Republicans, and I have never thought that way ever, because I had a Republican grandpa who told me to vote for the best person who I thought would be best for the job, and to not make it about political parties. He said that to me when I was a kid, and I held it with me. And that's why when I voted Democrat in every election, I've had cousins say, how could you do that? Papa didn't do it. Well, Papa told me it was okay. All right. He told me that I can go out there and I can have a mind of my own and I can think for myself. But I just don't think people realizes in the South that a lot of people will just hold on to that tradition. And so they held on to that tradition, even if they didn't like Donald Trump all the way. Even if they weren't completely behind Donald Trump, they've been fed this line of bullshit, which is, well, at least you ain't a Democrat. And I know it's bullshit. I totally get it. But so many people have been fed that so many people went along with it. But now Tennesseans are suffering. Folks, I would like to talk to you about Chapter. Medicare is supposed to benefit seniors, but it can be so confusing. And with many agents chasing commissions instead of caring about folks, they're the only done fast and rest easy. You can reach them at 314-732-0422. To drive home to the people in Tennessee that these things don't matter. Kid Rock blowing up his Bud Light does not matter, does not affect how you live your life in this world, okay? If you want to get mad at Starbucks or Target, just don't shop there again. You weren't shopping there to start with, so just stop. But look around and see what's going on. And in Tennessee, minimum wage is still $7.25, and there are still people dumb enough to go to bat and say that it should stay right there. There's still people dumb enough to say, yeah, that's a fair wage in 2025. And there's absolutely no one who could make it on that amount of money. It can't happen. It's not possible. And as our kids grow up and they go out into the world, they go out with all the hope in the world of making it, just like we all did. We all grew up, we all headed out into the world, and we said, you know what, we're going to make something of ourselves. We're like Travis Tritt, we're going to be somebody someday. And then you get out there in the world, and you have your kids come back to you, and they go, Dad, I can't make it. And I'm saying to them, yeah, because the math ain't there. There's no way that you can feed a family based on this income. So to give you all an idea of what I'm saying, yeah, minimum wage in Tennessee is $7.25. But in my part of the world where I'm at, where I live in Tennessee, I'm in California at the moment, but where I live in Tennessee, a good paying job, you might look up and find one between like 14 and $17 an hour. And that would be like, whoa, you did really good. You landed a good one. That's how hard it is for people where I'm from. I don't think people fully understand that. So, yeah, we have had people over the years vote against their own interests for stupid reasons. But to say that, well, that's what you voted for, not all of us did. Not all of us were behind that. A lot of us have been fighting the good fight for many years, and more people are waking up. And again, there's a lot of apolitical people who just votes Republican because that's how they were supposed to do it. And because they really didn't think that Trump would do the things he did. And I blame the mainstream media for that one. I blame the churches for that. Because these people that don't tune into the news every day, they just tune in randomly right around election time. They look at the grocery bill. The prices are still high. They look at Donald Trump saying he'll bring them down, and that just sticks in their head. They haven't been listening to him the entire time like we do. And the only other time they hear about him is when they go to church and the minister's up there telling them that God lifted Trump up to do his work. And I know you think, well, that's got to be crazy, Brando. Go to some of the churches where I'm from in East Tennessee, Southeast Kentucky. The minister will get up on an altar and tell his audience that this man, this idiot, this scumbag was sent from God. And so that's another reason why they don't want to rock the boat. But there's a lot of really good people in Tennessee, and I have faith in them. I really do. I have faith that we can pull this one off and we can win this one. And so I want everybody that lives in Tennessee, especially if you're in District 9, but all over Tennessee, get everybody's attention on this one, get focused on this one, and get out there and make sure that Afton Bain gets across that finish line. Because, again, we do not need someone that takes their marching orders from Trump. And it's funny to me that he would still hold on to that at this particular point. To anybody who's even going, well, Papa was a Republican, maybe I'll vote for Matt Van Epps. This dude, as the ship is sinking right in front of his face, is still saying, oh, I can't wait to serve under you, Mr. Trump. So if you're pissed at Trump over your farming situation, if you're pissed at Trump because the grocery bill isn't any lower, if you're pissed at Trump because he's protecting pedophiles, then get out and vote in this special election, and let's do the unthinkable. I want to be able to come back on here and say we did it, Tennessee. And then that will be a step in the right direction. And maybe eventually we can come out of this nightmare that we've been in for so long. It's hard. It really is. It's hard going to bat every day in Tennessee for what's right, because it is a blood red place run by a bunch of good old boys that I wouldn't piss on if there's
After the House passed a bill to force the release of the Epstein files, Donald Trump showed us he is more panicked than ever before, than at any other point in his presidency, with two insane posts. The first, of course, about the Jeffrey Epstein files. The second, equally as crazy, about how angry he is with Black George Washington. Yes, you heard me right. Donald Trump is in a state of utter collapse that he is showing off on Truth Social. We are going to get into it all and what it means for the Epstein files. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into these posts from Donald Trump, I think it is important we address what he and Republicans are trying to do today, and that is rewrite the history of the Epstein files and their attack on Democratic efforts for transparency. And someone who has been calling that out is Jamie Raskin in this clip right here.
I'll take the opportunity of the Speaker's presence to respond to some of the things that he said. In the very presence of the victims and the survivors who come to join us today, the Speaker said that now would be a time we should be working on urgent legislative work. Mr. Speaker, justice is urgent legislative work. The truth is urgent legislative work. The Speaker says, why now? Why now? Well, Mr. Speaker, you were the one who refused to swear in Adelita Grijalva for 50 days. We would have done it 50 days ago, but she provided the 218th signature on the discharge petition. So why now? It was because of your dilatory tactics, your delay, your postponement of it. Now,
I want to talk later in this video about the efforts that Donald Trump will undertake to block the release of the Epstein files in full, even after Congress forces their release. But right now, I think it is so important to address not what Donald Trump will do in private, but what MAGA is trying to do in public, what Jamie Raskin is calling out, the fact that they want you to believe that they've always been for transparency. But Mike Johnson and John Thune and Donald Trump did not have some change of heart. They do not have moral clarity. They are just trying to change the narrative and pretend that they always wanted the release of the Epstein files, and actually are trying to pretend that it's Democrats who blocked it, both under Joe Biden's administration, which isn't true, and over the past couple of months, another blatant lie. But Donald Trump is trying to do this and trying to shift focus, I guess, back to the failures of his administration, which Jasmine Crockett called out right here and is very important context for the insane post that Trump made.
Foods. So listen, if you can have this honest conversation about Epstein now, let's just go ahead with this lame duck president and be honest about everything that the American people care about. They care about affordability. They care about the fact that literally people are starving in this country because we have 42 million people, and I don't remember any one of you during that almost 2-month break deciding to go on faux news or any other news outlet and say, you know what, it is wrong to have 42 million people that are relying on $6 a day to eat, and we have the money because somehow our president was able to find under the couch cushion, the one that JD wasn't sitting on, under the couch cushion, he was able to find 40, how much did he find to send to Argentina? 40, there we go, 40 billion to send to Argentina. But those emergency funds, he couldn't find them emergency funds so that Americans could eat. So listen, if y'all are gonna be honest and talk about Epstein right now, let's be honest about everything that is causing y'all to lose real bad. Did y'all see the election results on November 4th? It didn't go very well. So let's just start having honest conversations so that hopefully some of y'all in some of these tight seats, maybe y'all can get reelected and we can just work together.
Ms. Crockett.
Would the gentlelady yield? Who, what, both of y'all want? Y'all want some?
I do not think there is a more important issue that we could be talking about right now than Epstein. I think this is the most important thing for Democrats to be talking about because, as Ro Khanna has termed it, there is an Epstein class in this country. And Donald Trump and every member of his administration and every Republican in Congress is certainly part of it. These are people willing to sell us out to their rich, powerful, well-connected buddies so that they can benefit. They don't think the rules apply to them. They're happy to take jets from Qatar. They are happy to insider trade. They are happy to cut your health care, gut the services that keep Americans alive and fed and healthy for billionaire tax cuts. So soon, Next year, maybe there can be trillionaire tax cuts. They will sell us down the river as they protect their white-collar criminal friends. That is what they always have done. That is what they will continue to do unless we push back. And the Epstein Files release is an important step in doing so, in changing the political alignment in this country to understand that billionaires are the problem and that we will not engage in these ridiculous culture war issues that the right tries to force upon us. We are waking up to that, and it terrifies Donald Trump, which is why he made one Epstein post and one culture war post. The first of Trump's two Truth Social posts reads, "Investment in AI is helping to make the U.S. economy the hottest in the world, but over-regulation by the states is threatening to undermine this growth engine. Some states are even trying to embed DEI ideology into AI models, producing woke AI. Remember Black George Washington? We must have one federal standard instead of a patchwork of 50 state regulatory regimes. We can do this in a way that protects children and prevents censorship." Trump then followed that up with a post about Epstein, writing, "I don't care when the Senate passes the House bill, whether tonight or at some other point in the near future. I just don't want Republicans to take their eyes off of all the victories that we've had, including the great big beautiful bill, maybe Bubba, closed borders, no men in women's sports or transgender for everyone, ending DEI, stopping Biden's record-setting inflation, the big tax cuts." Donald Trump, of course, continued saying that he's invested trillions of dollars in the country and that we are the hottest in the world, and even delivering a huge defeat to Democrats on the shutdown Make America Great Again. Okay, first on the Black George Washington AI slop message that Donald Trump put out. What happened to states' rights? Are you guys not doing that anymore? When it means regulating women's bodies, you're happy to, but when it means regulating AI and preventing Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk from making billions more dollars in a detrimental fashion to Americans and the environment, then it's fine. Okay, I can't even. But the Epstein post. Trump is furious. Trump is panicked, and Trump, again, is trying to rewrite history. He wants to pretend like he was on board with this, that he doesn't care, that he just wants to move on, because that's what Republicans will now say. They will now say that the Epstein files have been released, whatever, couple of documents that Donald Trump puts out there. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff about Bill Clinton, but Donald Trump will release a few documents. Remember the folders that he gave to the MAGA influencers? It'll probably be that. And then he'll say, well, Republicans, we released the Epstein files. Now we want to talk about what matters. And Democrats are getting hung up on that. They're so focused on it for political reasons. They don't care. We released the files. That is what they'll say. We need to pay attention to the pivot that is happening from the right, because we need to be able to identify it and point out that it is bullshit. I will never rest until all of these files are released. And I do not think all of these files will be released under Donald Trump's administration. But I do believe that Donald Trump wants you to think that when Democrats take over the House and take over the Senate, God willing, in 2026, that when we win the midterms, when it is a blowout, and by the way, Texas's new maps, they're gonzo. A federal court has struck them down. Of course, they'll go up to the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens there. But Donald Trump is on pace to an even more brutal midterm loss. But when this happens, they will pretend that any investigation, any hearings that we hold about Epstein, that they're futile, that they're nonsensical, that they're a distraction from actually getting stuff done. That is not the case. Not only because Donald Trump won't have released the full Epstein files, but because, as I've said throughout the entirety of this scandal, and we've been talking about it for a long time. We were talking about this last year, by the way. A lot of independent media was. What is not in those files, to me, could be more damaging than what is. That is why I want everyone in this administration subpoenaed. Trump, I need him under oath. Pam Bondi under oath. Kash Patel under oath. Todd Blanche under oath. Of course I want Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein's brother, why not? All of these people need to go under oath. Mike Johnson, his staff need to go under oath. They were breaking the law for refusing to swear in Adelita Grijalva. They were breaking the law. All of them. I want all of them held accountable. That is not a futile undertaking. That is not unimportant. That is important. Donald Trump wants you to move on because he knows that nothing will change if you do. It is more important than ever, that we continue to talk about the files, that we continue to talk about what they've hidden, what they've scrubbed, what they don't want us to see. I promise you, we are not going to let up. We cannot let up, because if we do, they win. If we take them at their word, which why the fuck would we, they win. and we cannot do that. But that was not the only thing Donald Trump posted about. Of course, he was posting about AI as well. And AOC, because it's largely been progressives on top of this, it just ripped apart all of this AI bubble bullshit that you need to know about. That is coming for tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of jobs around the world, but specifically in America. What AOC said was so perfect, you got to check it out.
They have not yet proven. Just this morning, the Wall Street Journal reported a significant drop in the U.S. stock market with the headline AI bubble fears hit stocks. Now, this also contrasts with what we've been hearing from the Trump administration, that the economy in general is thriving. And he's been saying that the economy is booming, but it's only 7 tech companies that are booming: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta. And they're driving this growth in just one sector, AI. So the entire US economy growth can be tracked down to 7 companies and their AI growth specifically. At least 40% of economic growth this year is attributed to these companies alone, and 80% of stock gains this year came from AI companies. But people are justifying these levels of investment because of the promises that the CEOs make that there will be a return on that investment. So for a company like OpenAI, their value is based on the expectation that they're going to figure out how to make a profit out of it. And they haven't. And so generating this increased human dependency that can be mined, because it's not subject to HIPAA, is that correct, Dr. King?
Right, it's not subject to HIPAA.
It's not subject to HIPAA. So people's deepest fears, secrets, emotional content, relationships can all be mined for this empty promise that we're getting from these companies to turn a profit. And the reason I bring all of this up is because the exposure of this industry and this investment, I fear, has reached broad levels potentially of the American economy. When we're talking about 40% of stock growth in the United States being attributed to these companies in the AI sector alone, and that sector has not turned a profit, we're talking about a massive economic bubble. And when we've seen, depending on the exposure of that bubble, we could see 2008 style threats to economic stability.
We need to be fighting back against the oligarchs on all fronts. That is, against their abuses of children and their abuses of their workers, the abuse that will take place with AI. We got to call it all out as progressives. We're certainly going to on this show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video if you stuck around at the end.
You are listening to 24/7 online radio.